But
Yeah,
a
that's
warmer
me.
upper.
I mean, I'm starting to cook a little bit more.
All the
Yeah, all
easy
the easy
dishes.
ones. But yeah, Jazz, I
Okay.
appreciate you being here. I know I'm super excited just to talk about these
Hi,
things that we're
Victor.
talking about. So, primarily, we're going to be talking about just
Me
self-love
too.
and self-care, especially during these times. You are a mother. You are a
Yes.
speaker. You got your own podcast. You are also an author.
Hmm.
You got a lot going on. Like, of all those things, what are you most
Yeah,
proud of?
I did. Mom,
Definitely.
mom. I got my oldest is on her way out
Hmm.
of college, and I had her at 18 years old. So statistics would have said that she would have repeated the cycle and maybe not have gone on to be successful. And so I'm most proud when I look at my
Yeah.
oldest child. The other two got a more mature
Okay.
version of me.
Yeah.
So they're I think they I don't know, I think I'm a little bit better as a parent
Hmm.
now than I was then. But I would say my mom. I'm most
Yeah.
proud of
That's
mom.
dope. Now, as a mother,
Hmm.
I mean, there's really no blueprint, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, like on how to be a parent. But a lot of people just say, I'm going to parent in a way that's just the opposite of my parents. Is that the same way that you, and the same approach that you took?
Hmm. That's funny. I thought I was the only one that
Oh.
said that. I'm just joking. No, I know
Yeah.
we all we all want to like. I don't know. I think I wanted to like correct the things I felt my
Hmm.
parents did wrong, and I wanted to do better in certain areas, and I wanted to mimic some
Yeah.
things. But I think we all kind of have those things about our parents we
Hmm.
didn't like. But as you mature, what I've learned is, accepting my parents probably
Yeah.
was one of the biggest things that
Yep.
I had to do as an adult, just accepting them
Yep.
for who they are. And, but yes, I did find myself parenting, trying not to do a lot of the
Yeah.
things that they did or the things they
Yeah.
didn't do. And sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes it works, sometimes it
Yeah. No, I
doesn't.
feel you.
But
There's
yeah.
an aspect of it where you do have to accept and just realize that they just did the best that they could do with the knowledge that they had, with the beliefs that they had.
Hmm.
They just did the best they could do.
Yep.
So, which is what we're trying to do. Hmm.
And you hear that, yep. And you hear
Yeah,
like that's kind
it
of like a
is.
cliche thing, but it's really true. Like even we're doing the best we can, and our kids, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have
I
a list
know.
of
I
things
know.
they
I
wish
know.
we
I
would have
know.
did
I
different.
wish to
So,
think like I try to think like, okay, my kids got the best dad ever, you know. And I mean, as they get older, they get a little bit
mm-hmm.
more free with their mouths. You know what I'm saying? And start talking about my
Yes.
fault. So still trying my best. Definitely trying my best.
Hey, your heart's in the right place.
Yeah,
Honestly, that's all you can
definitely,
do is
definitely.
your
But they'll tell
best.
you how
You know
your
what I
best can
mean?
be better though. So, oh yeah, yeah,
Your kids
without a
will.
doubt,
Oh yeah.
definitely.
Oh, they're honest reflections of us,
Hmm.
and they really do make us better. If we
Hmm.
take the time to listen to them and humble ourselves, like I think sometimes we have
Yeah,
that parent hat, like what I say goes, but it's like no,
man.
they really were sent here to
Hey,
teach
Jazz,
us
that is one of
something.
the biggest
So,
lessons I've been learning in the past probably year and a half, consistently. That it's because I was raised in the
mhm,
church where there's this Bible verse where it says, "Train your kids in the way that they should go." You know what I'm saying? Then they will prosper. So it's all about this mentality of like,
mhm,
I know what's
mhm,
best as a dad, so you're gonna do this, son. You're gonna do this, daughter.
yeah,
But it's almost
mm,
backwards because even if we're looking at it from a Bible standpoint, like Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is for kids. Like if you don't humble yourself and be like a kid, like
right,
you're gonna never ever gonna enter into the kingdom. And so yeah, it is a trip. Like just
right,
loving on our kids and then allowing them to teach us, and we can learn some of the best lessons ever.
yes,
So that's dope.
yes, absolutely. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't know everything. And I'm that mom that will apologize
Mm-hmm.
to my kids when I've been wrong. And there's times and moments where I like reacted in
Mm-hmm.
a way I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
I could have did that different. And once the emotions have settled down on my end and their end,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to them and talk to them and just be like, you know what, I
Yeah.
honestly was in my feelings, and I probably shouldn't have said it that way, or I probably shouldn't have yelled at you.
Yep.
And so being
Yeah.
human with them, because they tend to think, I'm sure your kids think you're
I
Superman
know
and
they
think
do.
that dad's perfect. And
Yeah.
they put
I
you on this
know
pedestal like we did our parents. We
for
put our
sure.
parents on a pedestal too. So I like to lower it. I like, let me show you I'm
Yeah.
down here.
You know,
Okay.
actually, speaking of that, one of the things I try to do different with my kids that wasn't given to me is just having open conversations like that, like honest conversations. They're getting older. I mean, my youngest is 2, going to be 3, and my oldest, my daughter, 12, about to be 13. And I was telling her today, she
Okay.
sent me this picture of me, and then she was just like, "Oh, they call me Papi, and they're like, "Oh, you look like you're famous." And I was like, "Ah, I'm not famous or whatever." But I actually was gonna be on The Bachelor. Like The
Yeah.
Bachelor was on my line to get to a couple years ago. This was like in 2016.
Wow.
They literally asked me 4 times to go on, right? And the reason why I didn't at that time, I mean, do the math. My youngest daughter wasn't there, but my oldest daughter was alive, and they just moved to Atlanta, and I was like, I didn't do it for you because I didn't want you seeing dad, like in the hot tub, yeah, you know what I'm saying, with
Right.
4
In that
girls or
light.
all their friends talking to him like, oh, your dad should be with, you know, Jessica, or he should be with, like I just didn't want that. She told me today, she was just like, man, thank you for doing that.
Right.
But you can reapply. And then she was like, she was joking. she, no, but then she was
Now
joking,
she
but
wants
she
you to
was
be
like, no,
on
I
there.
don't want, that would have been a bad example. But it's just that they're watching. All that to say is that, what I'm saying, they're watching a whole lot more than they're
Mm-hmm.
hearing. So yeah, it was big on me. But
Mm-hmm.
with that, like we're even talking about parenting, that's not what we're supposed to be talking about. But we're supposed to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
talking
yeah. I
about
know.
self-love. And how do you
Right.
I mean, I guess, yeah, this will be intro into it. Like, are you actively teaching your kids self-love, or is it more something that you hope that they catch, and they learn? Because again, teaching is more so, parenting is something that kids actually learn, that's caught, not so much taught. Where are you at with the self-love emphasis when it comes to your kids?
Mm. I actually posted about this on
Hmm.
Facebook a couple days ago,
Yeah.
to lead by example. And I had mentioned to lead by example in your parenting and your relationships with your significant other or your spouse, your friendships and business. Demonstrate the behavior
Yeah.
that you want reciprocated. And so when it comes to teaching my girls, I got 3 girls, self love is truly rooted in me leading
Hmm.
by example by loving myself, because children do what they see and the behaviors that they see, not necessarily what you're telling them or mouthing off to them. They're going to, when they become adults, they're gonna naturally,
Yeah.
subconsciously mimic what they saw me do. And so if I'm conscious and aware about loving myself, I mean, what does that mean? That means being
Hmm.
gentle towards myself. As a woman, we see on social media the women that have, the purchased body parts, and they're creating this certain image of the, hourglass, or certain hair, or certain makeup.
Hmm.
There's a look out there, and women can get
Yeah.
caught up in comparing themselves. And so I'm mindful, like even when I'm getting dressed in the morning, to take a moment to like admire myself
Hmm.
in the mirror, because I know they're watching. And if I'm sitting in the mirror like
Hmm.
complaining about the rolls in my stomach or calling myself fat, then
Yeah.
what are my
Yeah.
daughters going to do? And so I am very conscious, and
Of course.
I don't hit the mark every single time, but I'm conscious about my language towards myself, and I'm conscious in my language in general, because again, I know that they're going to pick up on what I do
Nice.
and not
That's
necessarily what I
big.
say.
That's really big. I like that. So, but
Mhm.
going back a couple steps before that, is that now you're conscious of that. My kids are going to watch me,
Mhm.
all that. But where did it
Right,
become
right.
first something that you became conscious of for yourself? Self-love. When did you become conscious of that first and foremost for you?
Well, I had a really long relationship with my high
Mm,
school sweetheart, and we were kids, and we both had come from broken places emotionally. So when you put two broken people together, you tend to
mm,
have a dysfunctional relationship. And you start introducing children into that relationship, you find yourself
yeah.
staying because of the children. And so eventually I had to be honest with myself about that relationship, because I was unhappy, he was unhappy, and I knew what we were demonstrating in the house wasn't something that I wanted my
Mm,
kids to think was normal or healthy. And I had dealt with emotional abuse, I had dealt with infidelity, and I had dealt with some things that were really traumatic to my emotional and mental state. And when I decided to walk away from the relationship is when I realized that my self-love was in a
Yeah.
deficit. I was in the negative because I had put so much energy in trying to force a marriage to work, and I was
Yep.
putting zero energy into myself. So I kind of got, I put myself to the side in order to put my energy and dedication into something that was broken and
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going to be fixed regardless. And so after coming out of that, it was like a big weight had been lifted off of my shoulders that I had been living under. And that's when I knew it was time for me to
Yeah.
figure out
Yeah.
who the heck I was, who I wanted to be, who am I outside of this relationship? Who am I outside of being
Yeah.
a mom? Who the hell am I? And I didn't really know. I had an idea. It was some things I liked. It was some things I dabbled in. Um, I knew that I had a purpose
Mm-hmm.
to encourage and empower women. I knew that that was there, but it was no way for me to cultivate my purpose inside of a
Yeah.
dysfunctional or a toxic relationship. So I really had to, start from scratch and begin loving myself, taking care of myself, getting into
So when did
therapy, that
your
kind of stuff.
journey actually begin? So you say you were in a long dysfunctional relationship. When did that come to an end, and when did the new
Hmm.
relationship with yourself begin? When is that?
Yeah. It's my anniversary is every October.
Dope.
So in October, it would be five
Dope.
years, my freedom anniversary, I call it. And
Nice.
it's also my birthday month. And it's also Domestic Violence
Mm.
Awareness Month. So October brings a lot of different emotions whenever it rolls around. And this
Nice.
October, I'll be 40. So
Congrats.
entering into a new, I
Yeah.
know. That is that I don't like
uh,
it's all good and all positive. I think when I think of turning 40, it's just the
yeah.
realization of
That's
how
true.
fast life goes. So fast. I was just 25.
I mean, yeah, seriously.
Weren't you just
No, you,
25?
you definitely got
So
that
yeah.
black don't crack. So, um, yeah, you good. Um, yeah.
Hey.
So, that's what I want to hone in on a little bit more though, because when you said that you were completely lost, you didn't
Mhm.
know who you were. You went through therapy and all of that. You knew that you wanted to help women. Like, what was your one anchor that you're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who I am, but I do know this. Like, was it that you had a purpose, or what was the one thing that you did hold on to that kind of continued to give you hope? What was it? Mm,
God, because God is there whether
got it.
you're paying attention to him or not. That's the beautiful thing about having a relationship with God is
Mm,
it actually is unconditional. And I've gotten the most benefit out of my relationship with him when
yeah.
I'm conscious of it, and not just
Hmm.
going to him in my time of need, but he's always there for me in my time of need too. And that's always been the anchor, whether I was actually sitting in the church every Sunday or not. My relationship with
Hmm.
God is very personal and it's very daily, and it doesn't happen in
Yeah.
the confinement of four walls. It happens, in my car when I'm driving to work and I'm having a moment and I'm just like, there's times where I've just yelled and screamed and
Hmm.
like, why me to God? Like
Yeah.
basically went off on God. And then I just be like, you know what,
Hmm.
Lord, I'm like, I'm sorry for the disrespect, but this is how I was feeling, this is how I feel. And because I know that God will never reject me, it makes it a safe place for me to have that relationship. And
Yeah.
that's been my anchor
Yeah.
and still
I love
is
that.
my anchor
Similar
for
to you, I
sure.
remember there was a time when I was a pastor, stopped being a pastor, went through a divorce. When you think you hit rock
Mm,
bottom, and then you hit rock bottom again, and you hit rock bottom
mm,
again, and then again, like
mm.
35 more
Mhm,
times.
mhm, mhm,
And I hit rock
mhm,
bottom for like the 36th, 37th
mhm,
time. And I began to hate myself because I was like, dude, you are a fuck up, basically. Like, you're no good,
mhm,
and the
mhm,
religious circle that I was in at that time was telling me it was
mhm.
all happening because of my sin. So it was a lot of
Hmm.
self-loathing and self-hate, exactly, and guilt and shame,
Condemnation,
which when you look at the frequencies
shame.
that we omit as people when we go through feelings, guilt and shame are like the lowest on the vibration,
Mm,
and so I was
mhm, mhm,
plagued in guilt and shame. And exactly what you said, the love of
mhm,
God knowing that there's this, I started reading this book that was called One Way Love. And it was talking about how there's just the
Hmm.
love that God has for you. It's just one way. It doesn't go this and that. It doesn't matter. Like, it's
Hmm.
directly coming at you full speed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times we tend to think
Mm-hmm.
who God is based on how other people are treating us. So I was like, God can't love me because other people aren't loving me.
Yes.
You know, God can't be forgiving me because other people aren't forgiving me. Or then we
Mm-hmm.
think that God is based on our
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. And I was like, God must not be cool with me because my circumstances are horrible. But that idea that God
Yep.
is just showering me with love, pursuit, like with
The
love
same.
all the time,
Yes.
started to
Yes.
begin, like it's
Yes.
changed the soil in my heart, and it dropped a lot of seeds of love in my heart for
Mm.
myself. I was like, oh no, like I can
Mm.
be loved, you know? I love, love, love. And so I agree
Mm-hmm.
with you. That one
Mm-hmm.
way love that God has
Mm-hmm.
for me began to make me think differently about myself and love myself. Um, so
Mm-hmm. Not
yeah,
looking at him like a human being,
yeah,
like an imperfect human being, but looking at him as the almighty creator that he is. And then also
mm-hmm,
knowing we're a reflection of him. So when we step out of the shame and step out of the guilt and step out of the negative narrative, we start to see
yeah,
ourselves the way he sees us and not necessarily the way our outcome of
mm-hmm,
our life is telling us
yeah.
we are. You know what I mean? It's like where you stop looking at your stuff and you start looking at him, then he starts to
There
reflect,
you
you
go.
start to see yourself in him. And then you begin to love yourself, which then enables you to love other people because
That's
we truly cannot
yeah.
love nobody if we don't like we had like I'm the
Okay.
best place to practice
Yeah.
love on myself. Forgive myself, be gracious towards myself, be gentle towards myself. Like when I can practice this with me, because
Mm-hmm.
I think we were saying earlier how you're with yourself 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. What better place or
Exactly.
person to practice
Exactly.
love other
Exactly.
than
So
me? And
no,
I
no.
think,
Speak on that. Yeah. Tell
no,
me
go
what you
ahead.
think, because I got a question. I got somewhere I want to go with you on that. All right. So so this is
I'm
the thing. I
go.
feel
Let's
like there's a
go.
paradox with self love and loving others. I definitely agree with you. To the degree that I love myself, is the capacity or the degree to which I can love others. For sure. You can't give others what you don't have. You know what I'm saying? So I
Hmm.
definitely agree with you. The paradox that I'm
Right.
finding though, and maybe you can help me out with this, is that the more that I love myself, I know my worth, but the less I tolerate BS. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I
Hmm.
tolerate BS
Hmm.
less because I'm loving myself more, you
Yes,
know?
you do.
So like speak on that. Speak on that
Yes.
tension, that
Yes.
paradox, that yes, self-love creates self like love for humanity, but it also like just increases
Hmm.
your intolerance for BS. So like yeah.
It really does. It does. When I think about like bad relationships in the past or like dating guys that just like had
Mm-hmm.
crappy behavior and stuff. And I wonder like
Yeah.
why did I tolerate that for so long? Like
Mm-hmm.
why was I even okay with that? And that's because the value that
Yep.
I placed on myself wasn't very high. And so when as you start to increase your value, you start to love yourself, accept yourself. You start it's like this amazing confidence starts to just take over your body
Mm-hmm.
where you just owning your
Yeah.
life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You're not ashamed of
Yeah.
anything. You're not fronting in front of nobody. And so when you're not playing games with yourself, then
Exactly.
you ain't got time for somebody else's
Exactly.
game. Like I'm done playing with myself. I'm done lying to myself. I'm done
Mm-hmm.
being in crappy relationships. And so if I'm not tolerating that behavior from myself, then I'm definitely not going to tolerate that behavior from
Yeah.
somebody else. No, I don't have room for it. I made room for it before because I didn't
Yeah.
know how valuable I was. And so now it's like only room for good stuff. Now,
Mm-hmm.
do bad things happen in life? Will we experience
Mm-hmm.
pain? Absolutely. But I'm inflicting way less pain on myself now than I did
Yeah.
before when I didn't value
So speak on
myself.
this from like a
You know
real
what I mean?
example. Say you're in this relationship where, or you were, you know, and you're like, no, I have too much love for myself to tolerate this type of behavior. Um, how is that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you talk to yourself? How are you loving to yourself when you're like, no, I'm going to break away because this ain't good for me, even though this person's going to be hurt? Like, what are your, how do you practice self-love in that moment when you're like, I'm doing what's best for me, but I know that this person's going to be hurt by what I'm doing? Like, what's your thought process on how to navigate through all of that?
I
Mm,
mean, in terms of like now, I handle things
yeah.
much differently than I did before. I used to be very passive aggressive and I did not use my
Mm,
words. I did not communicate my feelings. And that was for a lot of different reasons, childhood trauma and just not
yeah.
ever feeling my voice was honored. So I
Mm,
used I used to not speak. Now I speak. And so if there's behavior that I
yeah.
don't like, I speak about it. And if that behavior doesn't work for me in the relationship, I know that I have the freedom to walk away because I'm lacking nothing. I
Mm,
don't need this person to fill a void. I don't need this person in order to
yeah.
like not be
Yeah.
lonely. Like I am
Yeah.
enough. I'm enough as is right now. So if someone is not going to be respectful or honor me the way I'm honoring myself, then I don't have
Mm,
time for that relationship. And I can very directly tell you, like, for instance, I was dating this one guy and he was a complete asshole. And at the beginning, I was like,
yeah.
okay, wait, wait,
Yep.
wait. Don't be judgy. Like, let's just see if there's
Yeah.
some other sides to him.
Yeah.
Don't walk away too fast. Like, just, keep be aware. So, but it was like this repeated
Mm,
self-hate behavior. Some of the things he would say about himself, about black women, he would just constantly make comments that were disrespectful to me, even though they weren't to me directly, but they
yeah.
were about black women, so it was about me. And I remember the last straw that broke the camel's back is when he had made a
Mm,
comment about a head wrap that I was wearing. And it was very negative and derogatory. And he tried to laugh it off like it was a
mm,
joke, but I knew it wasn't a joke. And so at that point in time, I had made the decision, okay, the things that you've seen, these red flags over the past couple of months that you've seen were true. You can trust your instinct. And I straight up told him, I don't
mm,
want people like you in my life. I appreciate the time this past couple of months, but
yeah.
this is a good time for us to
Yeah.
end this. And I just told him. So I think that women have to be and men have to be unafraid to walk
Mm,
away from things that don't serve them. Be unafraid and know and trust that what is on the other side of whatever you're in
mm,
is better for you. Like your future is greater regardless. So if that person comes and goes, let them come and
yeah.
go. Like you
So
deserve
you, like you
better.
say, people end up deserving better, but a lot of times you're in a relationship and you get scarred and you get hurt. I mean, we're in a situation right now where whether you're in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship or not, like there's stuff going on in this world that hurt us. You know what I'm saying? That not trying to play the victim card, but
Mm-hmm.
there are things that are outside of our control that people
Yeah.
do, whether it's officials make decisions, police make decisions, and hurt, and we end up being affected by it. Whether it's coming out of a relationship or maybe the time that we're in
Mm-hmm.
right now, what's the first step then to practicing self-care and working on your healing and not making someone else responsible for that healing, especially the person that harmed you? Because I know times when I've been hurt,
Mm-hmm.
I just want the person that hurt me to recognize that they
Mm-hmm.
hurt me and to work on and be responsible for that and fix it. You know what I'm saying? Like when we're hurt, I go to the doctor. Hey, doctor,
Mm-hmm.
fix me. You know, when your back is hurt, you go to the chiropractor. Hey, fix me. But
Right.
with life, it's different. Like God's given us the tools within ourselves to be like,
Yeah, it
no,
is.
like you can work on your own healing. What are some of the first steps towards that?
Yes. Well, taking ownership, number one. Taking ownership of where you are in your life, regardless of what's happening in the world. There's lots of crazy things happening in the world, but we can't control those things. One of the things we can
Yeah.
control is taking ownership and accepting where we are and knowing that if it's something that you don't like or it's not serving you,
Mm,
you have the power to change it. I know for me, it took me a very long time to leave my relationship because I wanted the dream of a family more
mm,
than the reality that I was living in. And one of the very first steps, once I realized that I'm willing to walk away from this, I'm willing to walk away from this dream, one of the very first things I
okay.
did was get into therapy because I knew that a professional that was unbiased, that would listen to me pour out all of my crap and not judge me, was something that I needed. I needed to go somewhere where
Mm,
I can get some tools to heal myself, to begin healing myself. Prayer is another
Mm-hmm.
tool that I use in journaling, because there is a lot that can come out of you in writing that may
Yeah.
not come out of your mouth in words. Not everyone is apt to using
Mm-hmm.
communication this way. Many people are used to being silenced in their situations. There's domestic violence situations going on right now where people are sheltered in with their abuser. And so, you don't have a voice in those kind of situations. And you got to ask for help. But I know when it comes to, and that's also part of
Hmm.
taking ownership, is asking for the help, and humbling yourself to just know that
Yeah.
where you are isn't where you want to be, but then there's someone out there that can
Mm.
help you get to where you want to be. And in those quiet moments where I didn't have a therapist around, or I didn't have my sister or my mom or
Mm-hmm.
somebody to talk to, it was
Mm-hmm.
me and the Lord in my journal. And I look back on some of my journal entries from years ago, and I see how much pain was in that writing. But I also see now today how getting those emotions out and processing them
Yeah.
is what has helped me heal. So you got to
Yeah.
get it out, like physically get it out. And if you're not talking about it, if you write about it, there's lots of ways to release and kind
Mm-hmm.
of make space for your healing, because it's literally like you're releasing the toxicity, but then now you're making
Yeah.
room for healing.
Yeah.
And that can be
Yeah. And
very
you mentioned
uncomfortable.
it's being highlighted down there in the questions, taking ownership, but then also, again, asking for help. How do you know you're asking for help from the right person? Because for much of my life, I asked for help from people that just wanted to direct me in the way that they thought would be best for me based off of the vision for my life. You know what I'm saying? So like how I had to learn
Hmm.
through lots of trial and error. But is what are some of the things, I guess, ideas or hints or tools that you could be like that you could say to us to help us discern what's good help versus what's bad help?
That's good. Uh, the very first thing that comes to mind, I heard from one of my mentors years ago: never buy an opinion or advice from someone that doesn't have what you want. So if I'm looking to become a millionaire and you're not a millionaire, then
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't be the person for me to talk to. If I want a healthy lifestyle and I know someone that has a healthy lifestyle, that's the person that you want to talk to. So you want to talk to people that have your solutions, who in fact have actually lived them out and applied them and become successful in it. So who in your circle is someone that you trust? And if you don't have, I just really, it's hard for me to say that
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have anybody, because I just feel
Yeah.
like everybody
Yeah.
can find one person, even if it's a stranger. I mean, there's tons of life coaches, inspirational people on Facebook, like me and you. There's therapists out there. And if you can't afford a therapist, I mean, there's lots of positivity
Mm-hmm.
at our
Yeah.
fingertips if we want it. We can always make an excuse that we can't find nobody or I don't have anybody. That could very well be the case. But what I would ask of that person is, if the circumstance you're in is a circumstance
Mm-hmm.
you no longer want to be in,
Yeah.
what are you going to do different? Well, I don't really talk to people like that. Well, if you want a different life and a different outcome, you have to
Yeah.
do some different action steps. And that
Mm-hmm.
stuff can be very uncomfortable. I understand that, but it's about moving through the discomfort
Yeah.
to get to what you
Yeah.
want and what you deserve. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I would
Yeah, this
say to
it's also
someone.
true that there's so much more to life than our understanding. Or like I said, so much more to life than just what meets the eye. So even for instance, I remember there was one of my lowest times in life. I needed a therapist badly, desperately. And I just began to put it out there. I'm like, "Ah, I
Mm-hmm.
need a therapist. I need some help. I do. And somehow
Yep.
I reached out to
Yep.
somebody who I used to know when I was pastoring at a church, and she's like, okay, well, how much money do you have? And I said, honestly, I don't have nothing. She said, well, let me connect you with Kim Walker. Kim Walker, she's a student right now at Azusa Pacific. She'll do it on a sliding scale or donation. So it's like you said, there's people out there. Yeah, you just
Mm-hmm.
gotta put it
Put
out
it out
there.
there.
You gotta put it out there, and it's amazing
Mm-hmm.
how life will begin to
You do.
respond to your faith. You know what I'm saying?
So
So
true. So
but
true.
yeah, you mentioned though. Yeah, it is. It
That's a
is.
word. That's a word.
Take offering a little bit. Cash App is it's fine. But you said that it's the hard work, right? The hard work that people don't want to do and it's uncomfortable. I get it. But we also live in a lazy society, right? Like I know people who
Yeah, we
can
do.
work right now, but they refuse to work because they're like, man, I just might as well collect unemployment. Like we live in a world, at least especially out here, that's like niggas don't want to work. You know, we do it lazy. So
Right.
like how what was motivating for you that made you want to do the uncomfortable work? Like what drove you to do the work, even though you know it's scary, I don't want to do it, nobody wants to. But what was it for you?
No, that's good. I would say internal fortitude, because
Hmm.
motivation is not something you can teach. It's in something inside of you, Victor,
Yeah.
that wants better, that knows you deserve better, that knows that if you continue to work on yourself and create a certain life for yourself, that that will
Hmm.
trickle down and benefit your children
Yep.
and your children's children.
Yep.
So it's having a
Definitely.
vision beyond yourself. I think pity and shame can keep us in our own little bubble, in our own little world. But when you step out of that and know, number
Hmm.
one, I got one life to live. One. Am I going to waste it sitting here being
Hmm.
shameful and fearful of everything? I mean, I deal with anxiety. I had a huge issue with fear of death because I dealt with a lot of death at an early age. It was so many traumatic events that I could have
Yeah.
continued to allow to hold me back, or I could have taken those experiences, what I learned from them, and
Hmm.
just live my life. Like, be happy,
Yeah.
like, do good, find value in everything. There's value in everything. There's
There
value
is.
in what we're going through right
Hmm.
now in this country and in this world. There's rainbows that we're seeing popping up in the midst of pain and injustice. So it's like, what do you
Yep.
choose to look at?
Yeah.
What do you choose to focus on? And I've always, for the most part, I've
Of
had some
course. Yeah.
pity moments and some depressing moments. But overall, I've always
Hmm.
wanted more. And it's just been, it's just something that's inside of me. I think it's just inside of people to want more, to achieve
Yeah.
greatness, to leave their mark. I don't necessarily
That's
know if
true.
that's something you could teach
One of
somebody.
my favorite times when I was a pastor, I was part of a rotation for the suicide hotline. There was a small little hour that I had like a couple times a week where if that phone rang, it was coming from the suicide hotline. And obviously went through some training on that. But the people that were ready to commit suicide were people that had ultimately lost hope. But you think about like what is losing hope, and
Mm-hmm.
losing hope is really when the point where you have no vision anymore for your life. And so what you're saying is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
Having the vision for your life that's beyond your circumstances, recognizing that there still is greatness and there still is value
Mm-hmm.
that you can still contribute to this world. And so a lot of people have said like, oh, when I look at my
Mm-hmm.
kids, I see my vision and I find my purpose there, you know? Um, that I feel like that should only be
Mm-hmm.
temporary though, because
Mm-hmm.
your kids may not always be here at home, and then you got to find out a new identity after that. So it is
Right.
always important though
Right.
to
Right.
have vision for your life. That's what gives us hope, for sure. I want to get into some of these
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Yes.
Let's see. It says one question
Okay.
is from Monique. It says, "How do you recommend someone to regain trust in their gut and in their thoughts after being manipulated by a narcissist for many years? I know many women who struggle with that. That's what keeps them from speaking their truths because what is true is not so clear to them." Let's see, Monique. Yeah,
Who said
Monique.
that? Monique, I understand exactly how you feel. I have felt that exact way with that exact experience. So I know the terms that you've thrown out there. I'm very familiar with that form of abuse. And what I found is when you are able to break out of that toxic cycle, because it's very toxic, and it actually has an effect on your brainwaves to be abused by a narcissist and to be abused, period. It affects, you start to operate in certain patterns in survival mode. And so you get very used to a toxic way of living. And so when you get out of that toxic way of living, you really do have to start from scratch. And that's why I recommend therapy for sure, because therapy can help give you tools to start replacing some of that negative thinking and toxic patterns that you've adjusted to,
Mm,
like losing your intuition. Therapy will give you tools to help you to start rebuilding your intuition. The way that I had to practice listening to myself again. I had to practice knowing what my voice sounded like. Like I mentioned, dating that gentleman at the beginning, I saw red flags, but I wasn't quite sure. So let me give it. It was practice. It was an experiment, and let me continue to give myself a little more time to make sure what I heard at the beginning
mm-hmm.
was my intuition. And I was able to determine out of that experience, through the patterns that he continued exhibiting, that what I felt at the
Yeah.
beginning was my intuition. And so it comes with therapy. You have to, when you've been in an abusive relationship, you have got to get help to reshape, reframe, rebuild
Mm-hmm.
the way that you think and feel. You need the help to start that over. And you can do it on your own. It might take a little longer, but it's possible. And so learning how to hear your intuition again comes
It
with
does.
practicing, listening to yourself, sitting in silence too, being unafraid of quiet time. A lot of times when we get out of relationships, we want to hurry
Mm-hmm.
up and replace it with another relationship. But then you're simply carrying over that past experience right into the next one. You
Yeah.
didn't even took time to regroup. And so when you spend that quiet time with yourself, um, that's another way to learn how to hear yourself again, is in quiet
Mm-hmm.
time and in
Yeah.
journaling, and lots of journaling, lots of, so, and a therapist for me has always kind of been that person where I can
Mm-hmm.
bounce ideas off of. So when this happened to me in this situation and I felt like it was a red flag, but I wasn't sure,
Mm-hmm.
would you consider that a red flag? So then having someone who is in a healthy
Yeah.
place, mentor, therapist, life coach, have that person kind of help you navigate, coach you
Yeah.
into hearing your voice again.
I think that
Does
was
that
great.
make
I think that
sense?
was a great answer. I think it goes back to, again, like what you're saying, not being afraid to ask for help. And a lot of times in life, you do get to this
Mm-hmm.
point where you get arrogant and you start thinking, no, I'm independent. Um, and we don't ask for help because it's a sign of weakness, but it's actually a sign of strength. It's a sign of wisdom. And
It
also,
is.
it's recognizing the greatness that exists in other people and how we're meant to be interdependent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm only going to be as great
Mm-hmm.
as the collective whole that's around me. You know what I'm saying? Like, even do you think about you and I right now
Mm-hmm.
communicating on this
Mm-hmm.
through my iPhone, on social media, through Facebook? You know how many other people had to be great at
Mm-hmm.
what they did so that you and I
Mm-hmm.
can even do this? Like, Mark Zuckerberg had to be great at Facebook.
Absolutely.
Steve Jobs with the iPhone. So, like, all of us, as we continue to be great, it
Right.
benefits everybody else. So asking for help is also telling that person, is like, man, I
Mm-hmm.
recognize
I love
greatness
that.
in you, and I need some of that right now. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah,
Mm-hmm. I love that.
cool.
That's good. That's good. I'm gonna open. The next time I ask for help, I'm gonna open with that. I'm gonna say
That's true.
I recognize the
It's
greatness
true
in
though.
you,
It
and I
really
need
is.
some
Like
of that. It's
we are
very
looking
true.
for sure. There's a universal need of love, definitely, and then we're all looking for validation.
Mm-hmm.
Like my life matters. Who I am matters,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
what matters about
Mm-hmm.
me or the value that I bring is going to be different than the value of somebody else. Like, yes, like we all have different value, and it's important to recognize that, in
Mm-hmm.
each other for
Mm-hmm.
sure. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yep,
Absolutely. Ask for help. If anything has kind of been a common thread in our conversation, is
hmm
humbling ourselves to ask for help. I mean, every
everyone,
great leader I know has a
everyone.
mentor, which is saying, I don't know it all. You know what I mean? You might have
hmm
some insight that I don't have. And so reaching out to somebody else for help is 100% the way that you're going to be able
Yeah,
to hear your
like you said, the most
intuition again,
successful.
for sure.
Yeah, appreciate that one,
Thanks for
Nick. The
asking
most
that
successful
question.
people, like you said, whether you know them or not, whether it's athletes, they all still have coaches. The business people that I know that are very effective,
Absolutely.
they have coaches, regular coaching calls, and all of that. So
Yep.
that's really dope. And I know clearly, um, you may not be getting paid for this, but I'm sure God keeps bringing you in positions where you're coaching other people, right? But it's also because you've been
Hmm.
coached. Not
Hmm.
only is it a calling on
Absolutely.
your life, but you've been coached. Um,
Yes.
one of the And still being
Yes.
coached. Exactly. That's what we're
And
talking
still
about.
being coached.
I remember one of the best definitions that I heard about a coach is somebody was saying that back in the day, we used to call when people would travel in a horse and carriage, that part that you can call it a carriage, but you can also call it, you riding in a coach. You're riding coach and you're getting from one destination to the other.
Mm-hmm.
When you're riding in the plane, like, oh yeah, everybody's sitting
Nice.
coach, that's average. But when you got a coach in your life, they're taking you, you let them know where you want to go. Oh, I'm going to the Bahamas, I'm going to Cancun.
Yep.
All right, sit coach, I got you. Like, and so it's important too. Like, I think
Yep.
a lot of people sometimes may be afraid to go to a coach because they don't even know the vision that they have for their life. I don't know, but I know I need help. Well, a good coach will
Yeah.
help you discover that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Pull
again,
that
the
out of
bad
you.
coaches that
Yep.
I had
Yep. Yep.
thought they had a vision for my life that didn't sit well with me. And it was forced. And those are the bad coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But the best coaches I had in my
Mm-hmm.
life, I
Mm-hmm.
became like their student. They studied me. And then they're like, nah, all right, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to pull this out of you. And I'm going to help you get to exactly where
Yep.
God wants you to be, which is ultimately where you want to be, because where God wants you to be will give you the most joy and satisfaction and happiness. Um, exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Fulfillment.
So yeah. So somebody wants to be coached by you, or somebody wants to keep learning from you, or somebody wants your book. How do they get a hold of you? Mm-hmm.
Well, Instagram is great at Love Incorruptible, which is the title of my first book. It's also on Instagram and right
Yep.
here on Facebook, of course. You can connect with me here. And if you want to send me messages after this conversation with Victor, feel free to send me a
For
message and we
sure.
can chit chat, see if I can be of
That's
value
right.
to your life.
All right, bro. I appreciate you, Jazz. Thank you so much for this conversation. Seriously, it was dope. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of other stuff I'm sure we could talk about too at another time, but for this one though, definitely good. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Be blessed out
Yeah.
there. Take care of
Yeah.
yourself. Love
Yeah.
yourselves, man. Love each
Thank
other.
you.
And it's good. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that was the main thing that I got. Yep.
That was a good one.
For sure.
Yes.
All right, Jazz.
God bless everyone.